All right, hey middle school, hey high school, it's good to be with you. It's Monday, May the 18th, and we're back in the church building today. The church building opened back up for everyone to come in office, so we're back in here today. This is your last week of school, most likely, and so, at least we hope so for you. You probably finished school a long time ago anyway. But, today, as we enter into this week's of devotions, I wanted to ask you, like, if somebody ever calls you out on something, do you immediately go to thank them for, hey, thank you for calling me out on my spiritual blindness, because if I didn't have people like you in my life, I would just get way too prideful, and so thank you for kind of keeping me level-headed and grounded. Well, no, we don't do that, right? We instead, most of the time, at least I do, try to justify what I did. And usually what I do is I don't necessarily justify the wrong that I did. It's just that I try to make sure that people realize that, hey, I've done some good things too. Like, don't forget don't throw all the good things out when you're calling me out for this one bad thing. If you think about it, that's really trying to put way too much weight in our own righteousness, right? Like we think that all of our good things that we do would outweigh the one bad thing we do. And like, we would never say it like that, but that's the way that we act, right? I want to read a passage to you out of Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 9. And Jesus is going to tell a parable here. He said, he also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and looked down on everyone else. He said, 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee was standing and praying like this about himself. God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, greedy, unrighteous, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of everything I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but kept striking his chest and saying, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you, Jesus said, this one who went down to his house justified rather than the other, because everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Think about that. Jesus takes a couple of people who, for the most part, the people that he were talking to were considered both the Pharisee and the tax collector to be just really bad. Like, you have the religious leaders who impose laws on them that they can't even keep for themselves. And then you have a tax collector who's looked at and despised because he would usually take more money than what you really owed, so that he could pay the actual tax and then keep the rest for himself. And yet in this example, you see the Pharisee who says, God, at least I'm not like this sinner over here, this tax collector. And yet the tax collector, because he realizes his own guilt, can't even lift his eyes up to heaven and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And so here's my challenge as we start this Monday. Where are you at in that? Do you look at your sin and maybe realize you've sinned, but you're not as bad as the other guy? Or do you look at your sin and go, that's Lord or the Holy Spirit, thank you for revealing that about my heart, because I realize that I still need your grace. You see, when we tend to go too quickly to justifying what we do and reminding other people of our righteous acts, all of a sudden our righteous acts don't really become righteous anymore, right? They become works. They become works that we're trying to stack up in this nice little building, in this nice little monument to our own righteousness. And when we start to do that, they don't matter for anything, because it's all about the heart anyway. So let me encourage you, middle schoolers, as you think about your own journey. I know, because I do it too. It's really easy whenever you get caught doing something or confronted about doing something. You realize, like, but I still do some good stuff, right? Like, it's not, when we are confronted with sin, it's not about remembering the good stuff too. It's remembering that any good that we have is because of God's grace working in our lives. And so when the Holy Spirit confronts us, sometimes that's self-imposed and we realize that about ourselves. And sometimes it's a parent or someone else that said, you know what? You're really being selfish right now. Either one of those creates an opportunity for us to cling to the grace that we need every day the same grace that we need to be rescued. High school students, it's really easy to look at like, well, I'm not hanging out with those people, so I must be okay. I mean, I'm morally good. But let me tell you something. Morally good people still go to hell and still are far from Jesus. And so let me encourage you that if you find yourself immediately saying, well, hey, at least I'm not like those people over there, or I'm a little bit better, you need to have a heart check, because there's something inside of you that's making you feel like you're better than somebody else. Everything's level at the cross, right? And so, as Jesus points out in this parable, the one who is justified, or the one who's right, was the tax collector. He said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. The Pharisee prayed, basically asking forgiveness too, but he also wanted to remind God of how good he was, and that he wasn't as bad as a tax collector. Just know that God looks at each one of us individually, and come to him in that. So let's be encouraged as we start this Monday, that whenever we're confronted of something that we know is wrong, it's an opportunity for us to embrace the grace that God is freely giving to us, so that we continue to grow in him. Don't be intimidated by it. There will always be people that feel like they're better than you. There will always be people that want to put you down. But how do you want to respond to the Holy Spirit's promptings to continue to reveal your sin and confess it and grow in grace? So I hope you have a great Monday. Look forward to seeing you live on Wednesday night. See you soon.